Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shop vs. Shop. I am Anthony Bowe with the Shop magazine, and today we're bringing Josh Poulson with Auto Editions and Jared Cohen with Auto Action Group back onto the show, and we're going to talk about shop spending. Specifically, what is more important, spending on marketing or shop infrastructure? So without further ado, today we're going to be talking about shop spending and whether or not a shop should spend more on marketing or infrastructure, especially if that shop has a limited budget. So, Josh, we're going to start with you.
This one, I'm taking the side of sales and marketing. You can build a great back end. You can put money into your computers and have the latest equipment and have everything. But at the end of the day, if you're not out there promoting yourself, then you're not going to get any business. So I think it's vital that you're out there, you're selling, you're putting it, whether money into a little bit of social media marketing, some Google AdWords, some old school marketing, whatever it is, you got to be doing something to try to get the needle to move a little bit. Otherwise, all that money you spend on your infrastructure is going to go to nothing. What do you think, Jared?
Without infrastructure, and when I talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about IT infrastructure. I'm talking about the computers, the CRMs. Without an accounting system, a GL ledger, without knowing what you're spending on your marketing through your infrastructure, you have no way to produce a budget. So I think Josh is putting the cart before the horse by saying that, I want to spend my money and budget my money on marketing, when he doesn't even know what his budget is, because you need infrastructure to develop that budget.
Well, we both agree you got to have some infrastructure. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, though, is if you have some IT equipment, you have some computers, constantly you can get upgrades. You can be upgrading all your computer, all your software, getting new applications, doing this, getting the latest iPad for your sales team, all these things, getting newer equipment for your shop. I agree, but there's got to be a point when you got to stop doing that. And if you're not paying for it, and the only way to pay for it is to do some marketing and get some business through the door. So I agree with you, there's got to be a budget, but you can't keep dumping money constantly. So if you have a little bit extra money, go double that money by putting it into marketing.
So, Jared, can you generate any revenue starting with infrastructure?
What we've done as an organization, I think we touched on the last Shop for Shop, was we have the ability to be as efficient as possible. All my salespeople can all place orders via our web apps. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting down on the two-step process where an order has to come in and then someone manually has to input it into a system or a secondary system, like a lot of people use Google Docs, and then they'll use a QuickBooks, so they have to invoice out of a secondary system. I spent my money through the years on my infrastructure, on my systems, to allow me to be more efficient, in turn allow me to have reduction in my fixed payroll costs, allowing me now to allocate those funds into revenue driving personnel. Installers and salespeople.
Well, let's say you have $2,000, okay, that you have that you can put towards something. Are you? If you're immediately looking at, okay, how I can better the shop, great, a little bit. But if you're constantly, and I think a lot of it comes with employees too, because employees always want the newest, latest, greatest. And they see some, new piece of equipment that makes their job a little bit easier. Okay, I understand that, but can you get by with the old equipment and put some of that into marketing? Because quite frankly, if you keep constantly dumping it into infrastructure, you're going to have the greatest looking shop in the world, but guess what? It's going to be empty. There's not going to be anything, no money generated from it.
Yeah, and I think to Josh's point, I think he's half right, but typically he's half wrong, in my opinion. And, I think I can generate marketing and revenue through infrastructure. And there's a plethora of ways we could talk about it, but at the end of the day, I don't see you necessarily generating infrastructure through marketing. So if I'm going to take that $2,000, I'm going to figure out how is it going to touch as many pieces as possible? How am I going to get the longest use for that dollar? And at the end of the day, I firmly believe that if I invest in infrastructure, if I invest in my systems, if I invest in a great place to work for the employees, well, I'm going to have employee retention. I'm going to be able to attract better employees, better salespeople, because of the infrastructure I've built.
So, Jared, if you're talking about those employees, then here's my only point. If you're not good with marketing and sales, you're not constantly feeding that animal, you can have a great infrastructure for your employees. You can have, Keurig coffee pots for them, pool, playing some pool. You can have the greatest equipment, but if there's no work, they're not going to stick around, and they're not going to get a paycheck. So you have to be feeding the marketing animal.
Absolutely, and not just on the employees on the labor side, but on my sales side. A lot of the infrastructure is attracted in as we've expanded in other markets, attracted sales. The salesperson with the relationship. So I'm able to attract both labor and sales and create revenue. Now look, I don't know what kind of infrastructure you have. If I had to put a sheet behind me to hide my infrastructure, I'd say I have a problem and I should focus on it. But I know you well enough to know that there's some madness behind that sheet. So
you got to have good infrastructure. I'm not saying you don't. All I'm saying is you have to be feeding the marketing, because marketing and sales will pay for the infrastructure. Infrastructure will only get you so far. Infrastructure, in my opinion, will not pay and get you sales. It'll help once you get the sales to process them quicker, make things more efficient, but without the sales first. So you talk about the cart before the horse. Sorry, sales and marketing is the horse and your infrastructure is your cart. Now you have a really nice cart. I'm just worried that your horse is about to die if you don't keep putting money into it.
That's right. And yes.
Josh, I just have a quick question. Is there a situation that would change your position, such as if I'm a new shop still operating out of my own garage or a small garage?
Sure. If you're looking to build your infrastructure because your sales has sustained and your marketing and everything has grown and your overall gross sales numbers are up, then yes, then you add on to the infrastructure. But what a lot of shops, in my opinion, make a mistake in is they want to, and it's the ego mentality. They want to go get a nice big shop. They want to get they go get a $60,000 truck, and they do it all up, and they spend all this money on the infrastructure, and they get really great laptops, and now they're paying through iPad. Okay, awesome. But if your sales cannot sustain that, all that stuff is going to get repoed.
And to Josh's point, he has a point. Not sure where it is, but at the end of the day, you need to know how to use your dollars for marketing, right? That business has evolved. That has changed. I am new to the retail sector. We are just getting into it. But what I've experienced in the last 6 months of retail and marketing approach is if you're spending significant dollars in marketing, then you have a problem, because with the social media platforms and how I don't want to say cheap or inexpensive they are, but how new to market Facebook, Instagram, even spending on simple Google AdWords is. So when we talk about budgeting from a marketing perspective, I think there's a lot of ways to do it very wrong, and there's a lot of inexpensive ways to do it right, or at least to troubleshoot and figure out what does work and what doesn't work. When you talk about infrastructure, I think you cannot go wrong by tightening up your P&Ls, by understanding your numbers, by looking at a CRM that tracks where your salespeople are going and what they're doing, on tools on the back end to be as efficient as possible, so your installers' commissions are being tracked through a portal, through a system. The more time you spend not working on production, the less efficient you're going to be as a company.
But Anthony asked, if you're a smaller shop, you don't need all that stuff. You really don't. You don't need to.
It's all scalable, Josh. Why wouldn't you do it as a small shop when there's 3 employees? It's going to be a lot more manageable to set up those building blocks now than to wait till you start growing and you fail ultimately because you outgrow yourself. But if your time is being spent because your infrastructures aren't tight, and you're worrying about your payroll at the end of every 2 weeks and who you're paying and how you're paying them, and you're spending 5 hours on that, well, you have a deficiency in your infrastructure. Get a computer system, get a program that does that work for you, and you should be focusing on marketing and driving revenue. Your infrastructure should be set so you're as efficient as possible.
Okay, guys, I want you to put your money where your mouths are and tell me, breaking down your budget, what do you both spend percentage-wise on infrastructure versus marketing?
So marketing from a budget perspective was very, very nominal for a long time. And I'm still trying my hardest to keep it to a low percentage. And it's hard for me to tell you of my revenue because 95% of my revenue is still a wholesale business today. We're still growing. So if I wanted to tell you what percentage of my marketing is to my retail business, it's going to be significant, right? It's going to be a large.
What he's saying there, Anthony, is he has no clue. So my marketing.
Well, I'm telling you, my infrastructure though, I do spend quite a bit.
All right.
How much are you spending?
70-30. So 70% of my dollar will go towards sales and marketing versus 30% will go to infrastructure. So if I have an extra $2,000, 70% of that's going to go towards sales and marketing, 30% is going to go to infrastructure, because you're still going to have the stuff that breaks. You're going to have the computer that dies. You're going to have the piece of equipment that needs repaired, and all that stuff's in it. But if you can maintain that stuff, do regular maintenance on that stuff, then you can allow that 30% to get you a lot further, so that when you do need to upgrade your computer system or your software, you have the money to do it. But 70% of that 70% will usually, if you market and sales the right way, will usually allow that volume to be much higher, so that realistically that 30% of the infrastructure is much larger because you've gotten the results from your sales and marketing.
Yep. But I think what we're arguing is Josh is assuming that your infrastructure is built already, right? And he's more on a maintenance program. We're trying to talk about if you needed infrastructure and you needed marketing, what's more important.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, at the same time, if you're a brand new business,
70-30 then. If I didn't have infrastructure, 70% of your costs should go to your infrastructure. And then once you flip the script and you have your infrastructure set, then I agree with you, 70% should go to your marketing because you've built your infrastructure already. Right? Infrastructure could be a relatively fixed cost once it's built. It could be a maintenance, as long as you're maintaining it, to your point. I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you.
Okay.
You can start off easy.
Here's another question. How does the market your shop serves dictate the decision of where to spend your money, marketing versus infrastructure?
It depends. I would say instead of more market, as far as where your market is, it probably has to do with what you're marketing. So I say, for instance, window tint is very aggressive. You can look at just what it costs on Google AdWords. You're going to spend 2, 3, 4 times more on a Google AdWord tint ad than you are maybe even a remote start or for sure like an interior package or a truck package ad. And so I would say it depends on the kind of marketing or what product you're going after. Because if you're going after tint, then your sales marketing is going to have to be higher than your infrastructure, because that's the only way to see results. But it does. But I don't know, Jared. What do you think? Do you think it matters more where you're located, or versus
I think so. I think some of our partners are in our Restyle United group that are in Oklahoma and other parts of the country are going to have a different sales approach, a different wow factor for a customer that's walking into a showroom, whereas me in the New York metro market, we have to show a certain level of wow factor different than any other market, right? We have a partner that's in Miami that's got one heck of a wow factor, right? I mean, he's got a hell of a showroom with palm trees. My palm trees would be plastic up here in New York. But I mean, I think building that infrastructure by location is certainly important, depending on where you are. Absolutely. Marketing doesn't necessarily have to have a cost associated with it. What I like to do is I partner with my vendor partners. You're partnered with them. You're not competing against one another. So why not look at the Goliath and piggyback off of some of their efforts and let them work and collaborate with you instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Your dollar can go a lot further if you go ahead and partner with some of these relationships that we all have or we all can have. Yeah. So don't be afraid to exploit those opportunities.
Last question. Who won this debate and why? Josh, you go first.
Well, if you run back the tape, you're going to find that it took me probably 3 minutes compared to Jared's 6 minutes to prove my point. So what that means is he's not quite sure if infrastructure is better than sales and marketing. He made some valid points. He's absolutely right that you have to have some kind of an infrastructure and that you do want to have good processes. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you right now, if your time and money is not being spent on sales and marketing, you're going to not see the needle go, and you're not going to have cars in your shop, and you're not going to have any money for infrastructure.
Okay, Jared.
And I get Josh's point, and I have a lot of respect for the way he markets, and it's not as easy as he makes it look, and it's difficult, and you could burn through a lot of cash very quickly. My point I was trying to make and why I won this debate is simply because without a tight infrastructure, you can't run the risks of the marketing approaches. You need to know and budget exactly what dollars you have on a month-to-month basis to go ahead and spend on rolling the dice with different marketing approaches. So I caution you to spend your money in marketing before you have an infrastructure building block. And I also value, like I said, our partners, our manufacturers partners, and I value reaching out to Josh more so than myself because I'm still figuring out marketing. And I reach out to guys like Josh and say, hey, what has worked in your market and what hasn't worked from a marketing perspective? You know, I mean, I think there's a lot more variables in what Josh is arguing than what I'm arguing. There's a fixed associated understanding of your infrastructure. You need systems, they need to work. There's cut and dry when it comes to numbers. Marketing, there's a lot of gray and there's a lot of moving parts. So where, you know, I would never want to say Josh wins anything. I think we both have valid points, but ultimately, without me, he's not here.
Boom. Mic drop. That concludes the latest episode of Shop vs. Shop. Be sure to subscribe to the Shop e-newsletter so you don't miss a future episode and get the latest and greatest content from the industry.